Welcome to Awakened Calm. Tonight I want to invite you into a journey that begins in a place older than memory, and yet as close as the rhythm of your breath. Imagine for a moment that you are standing on the bank of a wide river beneath a silver moon. The water is perfectly still, holding the reflection of the sky, as if time itself has paused to let you listen. This is where our journey begins, not in a temple carved of stone or in a book of rules, but in a living landscape of stories that have traveled across centuries to meet you right now. Many people in our world today are searching for rest when sleep will not come, searching for clarity when the mind feels crowded with worries, searching for a kind of peace that does not vanish when the alarm clock rings or when the headlines shout. Tonight, I will share with you tales that Zen masters once told in quiet courtyards and mountain monasteries. These are not dusty legends locked away in the past. They are keys that can still open the door to peace for anyone willing to pause and listen. Here is the promise. These stories do not require you to believe in anything. They are not asking you to follow a religion or memorize a philosophy. They simply offer a chance to discover what is already within you. They are mirrors that reflect the quiet strength you may have forgotten you possess. You may find yourself drifting into sleep as you listen, and that is perfectly fine. The wisdom of these stories has a way of planting itself gently in the mind, continuing to grow even in dreams. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how the best moments in life often arrive when you stop trying to control them? The laughter that comes unexpectedly with friends, the breath of fresh air when you step outside after a long day, the sudden calm that appears when you allow yourself to simply sit without chasing thoughts. These are glimpses of what the Zen masters called your original face, the peaceful awareness that has always been with you. Tonight, you will be guided back to that awareness, not through effort but through stories that open doors quietly. As you listen, imagine yourself walking down a path that leads away from noise and into stillness. On either side of you are voices from long ago, voices that speak of balance, of generosity, of the courage to live authentically. Some of these tales may surprise you, others may comfort you like a familiar song. All of them are invitations to rest more deeply and to see more clearly. So make yourself comfortable, let your shoulders soften, allow your breathing to slow as if the world itself is exhaling with you. Tonight is not about achieving or proving anything. It is about remembering that peace does not belong to another time or another place. It is here, waiting in the present moment, ready to be discovered. And as the stories unfold, you may find that the stillness you seek is already yours. Imaginary landscape opening. The river we began beside does not end with the reflection of the moon. It widens as you step closer, stretching across a plain where silence feels alive. The banks are lined with tall grasses that sway gently, their movement so subtle you wonder if they are bowing to the night itself. In the distance, mountains stand like guardians, their dark outlines softened by silver light. It is a place that does not demand anything of you. It simply exists, waiting for you to notice. Take a slow breath and feel yourself entering this scene. Each detail of the landscape seems to know something about you, as if the stillness is already familiar. The air carries the faint scent of pine and wet earth. A cool breeze brushes your face, not sharp, but refreshing, like a reminder that the world is larger than your worries. Far above, the stars gather like old friends who have been watching since the beginning of time. The sky holds them without effort, and you too are held by this moment. The soundscape is just as gentle. Somewhere in the distance, a bell echoes, low and resonant, perhaps from a monastery hidden in the hills. It does not command attention. It arrives and fades like a heartbeat, steady and calm. Crickets sing in the grass, not in competition with one another, but as a chorus that belongs to the night. Every note tells you that you are allowed to rest. The world is not asking you to solve its problems right now. It is inviting you to listen. As you stand by the river, you begin to see how the landscape mirrors your own inner life. The water is not rushing. It is not trying to reach the ocean all at once. It moves slowly, carrying reflections and shadows, holding both without judgment. You realize that your mind, too, can hold thoughts and feelings without having to chase them or push them away. Just as the river allows both moonlight and darkness to rest on its surface, you can allow both calm and worry to appear in your awareness without losing your balance. In this landscape, you notice a small path of stones leading toward a grove of trees. Each step you take echoes with clarity. The stones are cool beneath your feet, grounding you. As you move forward, the trees open to reveal a clearing where a single lantern glows. The flame is steady despite the breeze, as if it knows something about stillness that you have not yet remembered. The clearing feels both intimate and vast, like a sanctuary designed just for you. Sit for a moment in this clearing. Imagine lowering yourself to the ground, the grass soft beneath your hands. The lantern light falls across your face, and for the first time in a long while, you notice that your breath is no longer hurried. The rhythm has slowed, aligned with the quiet pulse of the night. Here, in this imagined landscape, you can feel the difference between existing and living. To exist is to move through days without noticing. To live is to see the lantern glow, to feel the grass under your palms, to recognize the river carrying moonlight. Perhaps you remember the times in your own life when a setting like this appeared without warning, walking home after a long day and noticing how the sunset painted the clouds in gold, sitting on a train and catching a glimpse of someone smiling at nothing in particular, as if joy had visited them for no reason at all, standing in your kitchen late at night, hearing only the hum of the refrigerator and realizing the stillness had its own kind of music. These moments are not separate from your life. They are reminders that peace is not far away. The path through this landscape deepens as you wander further. The lantern guides you until the trees part once more, revealing a wide meadow. Dew clings to the grass, sparkling as though the stars have fallen to rest upon the earth. You walk into the meadow and the sound of the river fades behind you. Here, the silence is even more profound. It is not the silence of absence but of fullness, as if every blade of grass, every grain of soil, every glimmer of dew is speaking a language beyond words. This meadow teaches you something. True tranquility is not created by pushing the world aside. It appears when you allow the world to be exactly as it is. The dew does not try to shine. It simply reflects the starlight given to it. The meadow does not try to impress. It simply exists as a meeting place for sky and earth. In the same way, you do not have to force calm. You do not have to earn peace. It emerges naturally when you stop struggling against what already is. As you sit in the meadow, you notice a new sound, a quiet rustling. From the edge of the clearing, a small figure steps forward. It is a monk in simple robes, carrying nothing but a staff. His presence does not break the stillness, it deepens it. He does not speak immediately. He simply stands, breathing the same night air you are breathing. Then, with a slight bow, he gestures toward the meadow around you. His voice is soft when it comes, more like the echo of the bell than ordinary speech. He says, "Do you see how the grass grows without your command? Do you see how the stars burn without your permission?" The monk is not offering a riddle. He is pointing to the truth hidden in plain sight. Much of the peace you seek is already happening. The breath that keeps you alive, the earth that turns beneath your feet, the rhythm of night and day that continues whether you worry or not. You realize that this imaginary landscape is not a fantasy, it is a reflection of reality. The stillness has always been here. What changes is whether you pause long enough to notice. In the distance, the bell sounds again. Its echo flows across the meadow and through the trees, carrying with it a sense of continuity. Every sound is connected to silence. Every moment of silence prepares the way for sound. There is no battle between them, only balance. You realize this is what the monk wanted you to understand. Peace is not about removing noise. It is about learning to listen so deeply that even noise becomes part of the harmony. The monk begins to walk away, his figure dissolving into the shadows of the grove. You do not need him to stay. The lesson has already been given. You look again at the meadow, at the countless stars mirrored in dew, and you understand something important. The landscape you imagined is also the landscape you carry within. Every time you take a breath, every time you pause long enough to see, the meadow and the river and the lantern are waiting. As you prepare to leave this scene, the path behind you is lit not by lanterns but by the quiet recognition that peace has always belonged to you. You walk slowly, unhurried, back toward the river. The moon still hangs above it, steady and luminous. The water accepts its reflection just as your mind accepts your thoughts. Both are allowed, both belong. You stand once more on the bank, and the night holds you gently. The hook of the story has become a doorway, and now you are ready to step deeper into the teachings that await. You have returned from the meadow, and once again you are standing near the river. The night sky has grown darker, yet the stars burn more clearly. A hush falls across the land, as if the world itself is preparing to share a lesson with you. It is at this moment that the memory of an ancient story comes forward, a story that has traveled from the mountains of Japan to reach you here tonight. Long ago, in a quiet temple hidden deep among cedar trees, a young student sat in front of his master. The boy had studied diligently. He copied lines of poetry, memorized rhythms, and practiced his brush strokes until his fingers ached. He had read every guidebook, repeated every formula, and followed every instruction with loyalty. Yet when he tried to write a poem of his own, the words felt lifeless. His verses were technically correct, but they carried no soul. With downcast eyes, the student confessed his frustration to his teacher. "Master," he said, "I have followed every rule of poetry, yet the lines that flow from my pen feel empty. How can I write words that live?" The old master smiled gently. He was a man of few possessions, his robe patched and his sandals worn thin from years of walking mountain paths. He looked at the student with patience and said, "Tonight, do not practice, do not read another poem. Instead, sit quietly in your small room and listen to the rain." The student was confused. Listen to the rain, he thought. What could rain teach him about writing? The master seemed to sense his doubt, for he added, "If you allow the world to speak without forcing it into form, the poem will find you." That night the student did as he was told. He sat by the open window of his room. Outside, the rain tapped softly against the wooden eaves, a steady rhythm rising and falling. At first, the boy tried to analyze it, to count the beats, as if they were syllables in a line of verse. But soon he realized that the rain did not belong to numbers or patterns. It belonged to the night. It belonged to silence. As he let go of counting, something shifted. The rain became more than sound. It became a presence. It seemed to tell him that poetry is not created by force but discovered by attention. In that moment, a line of verse rose naturally in his mind, simple, yet alive. He did not reach for it. It came to him the way dawn comes to the sky. The next morning, he carried his new poem to the master. The old man read it once, smiled, and set the paper down. "Now you have begun to write," he said. "Do not cling to rules or abandon them completely. Let them be like a lantern on your path, useful, but not the destination." The story did not end there. The student grew older, and his poems grew with him. He learned to balance discipline with spontaneity, structure with freedom. Years later, when war broke out and soldiers filled the villages, the same boy now, a man, found himself writing poems on scraps of paper for weary fighters. His verses were no longer about perfect form. They were about giving courage. He wrote of cherry blossoms that returned each spring, of rivers that kept flowing even after battles, of the sky that belonged to no army. The soldiers who read his poems found a moment of peace in the midst of chaos. Some said the words gave them strength to endure another day. This story carries more than a lesson about writing. It speaks to every part of life. How often do we follow rules and formulas, believing that if we do everything correctly, happiness will come as a reward? And yet, like the student, we sometimes discover that perfection without soul leaves us empty. Think of the ways this appears in daily life. You follow the steps to succeed in your career, but the work feels hollow. You say the right words in a conversation, but your heart is not present. You arrange your schedule perfectly, but there is no joy in your day. These are the moments when life becomes like poetry without music, accurate but lifeless. The master's advice to the student is advice for us all. Sit by the window and listen to the rain. In other words, stop chasing perfection long enough to notice the life happening around you. Stop pressing your heart into the mold of expectations. Let the world reveal itself and allow your response to arise naturally. This is not an argument against skill or discipline. The student still needed to learn form before he could transcend it. But when technique becomes a cage, it closes the door to authenticity. The balance comes from using structure as a guide, not as a prison. Imagine for a moment that you are the student in this story. You sit by your own window. Perhaps outside there is rain, or perhaps there is snow falling in silence, or perhaps only the hum of city lights. Whatever sound fills the night, let it arrive without judgment. Do not label it as noise or music. Let it be. Notice how the simple act of listening softens your breathing. Notice how your thoughts begin to settle, like leaves floating down onto still water. From this stillness, something unexpected may appear. A line of thought that is not forced, a feeling of gratitude that rises without reason, a memory that returns not to trouble you but to remind you of your resilience. These are your poems. They may never be written on paper, but they shape the way you live. The old master once said, "A poem is not words on a page. A poem is the meeting of the world and your heart." Tonight, your poem is the way you sit in stillness, the way you allow rain or silence to wash through you. It is the way you remember that your value does not depend on perfect lines, but on the honesty of your presence. The story of the student and the rain reaches across centuries because it touches something universal. We all know what it feels like to strive and still feel empty. We all long for the moment when striving falls away and authenticity emerges. The balance between technique and nature is not just a lesson for poets. It is a lesson for anyone who wishes to live fully. As you return to the river in your imagination, listen carefully. You may hear the rain begin to fall on the surface of the water. Each drop is a reminder of the story you have just heard. Each ripple tells you that you do not need to force meaning into your life. Meaning arrives when you are present enough to notice. The stars above the river remain, calm and unwavering. The bell in the distance sounds once again, and you realize that this landscape and the story woven into it are guiding you toward a deeper truth. The path ahead is not about escaping rules or clinging to them. It is about discovering the freedom that arises when you walk between them, balanced and aware. The river you return to after the first story continues its slow movement through the valley. The stars above shimmer as if they are listening to the lessons unfolding. You walk along the bank until the path opens to a small village. Lanterns glow warmly in the windows of wooden houses. Somewhere nearby, laughter and the sound of music rise into the night. It is the sound of a celebration, a gathering filled with food and wine. You step closer, and suddenly the scene of another story appears before your eyes. Centuries ago, in the heart of Kyoto, a wealthy lord prepared a grand banquet. His courtyard was filled with silk banners swaying in the breeze. Servants rushed about carrying trays of delicacies, each dish more elaborate than the last. Golden cups caught the firelight, and musicians played songs meant to impress visiting dignitaries. Everything was arranged to display wealth and prestige. Among the guests was a Zen monk named Ikkyu. His robe was plain, his head shaven, and his sandals worn from miles of walking. He entered quietly, bowing politely, yet his presence stood out amid the silks and jewels. Some guests looked at him with curiosity, others with amusement. Why had the Lord invited this ragged monk to such a glittering feast? The banquet began. Platters of roasted meats, bowls of fragrant rice, towers of sweet confections were laid out. The guests praised the abundance, their voices loud, their cups overflowing. The Lord beamed with pride. He wanted everyone to see his generosity and his power. At the height of the feast, he turned to Ikkyu and asked with a smile, "Tell me, Master, what do you think of my hospitality?" The monk's eyes wandered slowly across the courtyard. He saw the food piled high, the jeweled ornaments, the guests dressed in finery. Yet his gaze did not rest on these things. Instead, he looked toward the far edge of the garden where an old wooden bowl sat, half forgotten, collecting rainwater from earlier that day. The water glistened in the moonlight, still and clear. Ikkyu pointed to the bowl. "Hospitality is not measured by gold or silk," he said. "It is measured by the purity of what you offer. Even a wooden bowl, if it holds water that quenches thirst, carries greater worth than a feast that serves only pride." The courtyard fell silent. Guests shifted uncomfortably. The Lord's smile faded, replaced by a thoughtful expression. The monk had not insulted him, but revealed something deeper. True generosity is not about display. It is about sincerity. The bowl had nothing ornate about it, yet it reflected the moon more perfectly than the polished cups of gold. This story lingers because it challenges the way we measure value. How often in our lives do we chase after glamour, believing that beauty, or worth, lies in what shines the brightest? We decorate our homes, we polish our resumes, we curate our lives on glowing screens for others to admire. Yet beneath the glitter, we sometimes feel hollow. The wooden bowl of Ikkyu reminds us that essence matters more than appearance. Think of the people in your life who have offered you the most comfort. Was it the friend who arrived with expensive gifts? Or was it the one who sat quietly with you when you were hurting, offering nothing but their presence? Was it the colleague who spoke in polished speeches, or the one who shared their honest struggles, reminding you that you were not alone? True generosity rarely announces itself. It arrives humbly, like rainwater in a plain bowl, quenching a deeper thirst. The banquet in Kyoto may seem distant in time, yet it is not far from the world we know today. Our lives are filled with banquets of a different kind. Social media displays highlight reels of perfection. Advertisements promise happiness through luxury. We are taught to equate abundance with meaning, yet the lesson of Ikkyu whispers otherwise. To live authentically, we must learn to see past glamour and seek essence. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself holding that wooden bowl. It is light in your hands, rough to the touch. Rainwater fills it halfway, cool and clear. When you bring it to your lips, the water refreshes you in a way no banquet could. This is what the monk wanted his audience to understand. Simplicity nourishes because it does not depend on illusion. Now think of your own daily offerings, the smile you give to a stranger, the patience you show to a child, the kindness you extend to yourself when you make a mistake. These are your bowls of water. They may seem small, but they carry the essence of true generosity. You may not remember the details of every grand event in your life, but you will remember the moments when someone offered you sincerity. Others will remember when you offered it to them. The story also reveals something about power. The lord of the banquet believed his wealth gave him control over how others saw him. But in truth, power built on glamour fades quickly. The polished gold cup loses its shine. The silks wear thin. The memory of luxury vanishes with the next season. Yet the image of the wooden bowl remains timeless. It is a reminder that true power comes from authenticity, not display. Imagine how different our societies might be if leaders understood this. If they measured success not by how grand their stage appeared, but by whether their actions truly served those in need. The bowl of water in the garden is a vision of leadership grounded in service rather than spectacle. As the story concludes, you walk once more through the imagined courtyard. The guests drift away, their laughter subdued. The Lord remains silent, gazing at the wooden bowl in the moonlight. He understands that the monk has given him a gift greater than any jewel, the chance to see beyond glamour. You step quietly back toward the river, carrying the same realization with you. The river accepts your return without question. Its surface glows with moonlight just as the water in the wooden bowl did. You realize the two are not separate. The river, the bowl, the banquet, the meadow, the rain each points to the same truth. Life's true value is not found in glittering displays, but in the purity of what is real. As you listen to the river's song, you can feel this lesson planting itself deeper in your heart. Perhaps tomorrow, when you hold a cup of tea, you will remember the wooden bowl. Perhaps when you are tempted to polish your image for the approval of others, You will pause and ask, am I offering glamour or am I offering essence? The stars above shine on, unchanged by the feast or the bowl, steady in their own light. And you begin to see that you too can live in such steadiness, not by dazzling others, but by being clear and sincere in your presence. That is the true essence of generosity. The river carries you onward, its waters whispering of lessons already learned, and those still to come. The stars tilt across the sky, as if guiding you toward another truth waiting in the shadows of memory. You follow the river until the sound of voices reaches your ear. It is the sound of youthful laughter, sharp and confident, echoing from a hillside temple. As you draw closer, you see 3 students gathered in a circle, their robes crisp, their heads held high. Their master watches from a distance, silent but attentive. These young men had recently returned from a journey. Each of them claimed to have encountered a legendary sage in the mountains. Around the fire that evening, they competed to tell their stories. The first spoke with dramatic gestures, describing the sage as a towering figure who revealed secrets of the universe in a booming voice. The second painted an image of dazzling visions and supernatural powers, insisting the sage had given him a blessing no other had received. The third, not to be outdone, declared that he alone had been chosen for special wisdom, his words grand and elaborate. Their master listened quietly, allowing their pride to fill the night air. He did not scold them or challenge their stories. Instead, he reached for something nearby, a small basket of persimmons, the fruit still firm and not yet ripe. He handed one to each student and said simply, "Taste this." The first student bit into the persimmon and winced as bitterness spread across his tongue. He frowned, unsure of what lesson was being given. The second tried his, chewing thoughtfully before admitting that the fruit was sour. The third forced a smile, insisting that his persimmon was sweet. Though his face betrayed the lie, the master nodded at each response. Then he spoke, his voice calm but carrying weight. "You see, each of you ate the same fruit, yet your descriptions differ. None of your words change the taste on your tongue. Truth is like this. It is not what you claim before others. It is what you experience directly. Pride can dress itself in fine speech, but simplicity reveals what is real." The students fell silent. Their elaborate stories of the sage suddenly seemed hollow, just as their arguments about the persimmon dissolved under the reality of taste. In that quiet moment, they understood that wisdom cannot be proven through boasting. It is lived, not performed. This story echoes far beyond the hillside temple. How often in our modern world do we see the same pattern repeated? People compete to appear wiser, more enlightened, more successful. They post carefully crafted words, polished images, and grand claims, yet beneath the surface, the simple truth remains unchanged. Reality is not altered by our pride. It waits patiently, like the taste of the fruit, to be experienced honestly. Think of a time when someone around you spoke with great authority, perhaps in a meeting, a classroom, or a family gathering. Their words were impressive, but you sensed they carried little substance. Now think of another time when someone spoke simply, perhaps even softly, yet their words carried undeniable truth. Which voice lingered with you longer? The power of authenticity always outlasts the echo of pride. The persimmon reminds us that life itself is our teacher. We do not need to invent stories to prove we have learned something. Every experience offers a taste of truth if we are willing to notice. The bitterness of failure, the sweetness of kindness, the sourness of regret. Each flavor shapes our understanding more deeply than any boastful tale could. Imagine holding that fruit in your own hand. Its skin is smooth, the color somewhere between orange and gold. You take a bite, and the taste surprises you, perhaps sharp, perhaps unpleasant, but undeniably real. That taste does not require validation from anyone else. It is yours, immediate and undeniable. This is the simplicity the master wanted his students to discover. When you experience something directly, it needs no ornament. The story also carries a warning about the traps of spiritual pride. The students wanted to appear enlightened, to impress their peers and even themselves, yet in reaching for grandeur, they lost sight of honesty. How often do we do the same? We pretend to know more than we do, to appear stronger than we feel, to mask uncertainty with confident words. But pride is heavy, and carrying it eventually exhausts us. Simplicity, on the other hand, is light. It allows us to stand in truth without pretense. Consider the ways this truth applies to everyday life. A parent might pretend to have all the answers for their child, when in reality the greatest gift is admitting, "I do not know, but let us learn together." A leader might declare bold promises, but the true leader is the one whose actions quietly match their words. A friend might tell grand stories to impress, but the friend we trust most is the one who shows up consistently, even in silence. The taste of the persimmon is not only a metaphor, it is an invitation to return to your own senses, to notice the taste of your morning tea, the feel of the wind on your face, the sound of footsteps on the street. These simple experiences anchor you in what is real. They remind you that life does not require constant performance. It requires presence. As the story closes, you see the students bow their heads. Their master does not scold them further. He simply lets the silence do its work. The crackle of the fire fills the courtyard, and in that quiet, the lesson settles deeper than any lecture could. Truth has no need for ornament. It reveals itself in the simple act of tasting, seeing, hearing, being. You leave the temple and return once more to the river. Its steady flow feels different now. It no longer seems like a backdrop to the stories. It feels like the story itself. The river does not boast of its journey. It does not need to. Its truth is evident in every ripple, every reflection. The river flows because that is what rivers do. And perhaps wisdom flows the same way. When we let go of pride and return to what is simple, the stars overhead remain constant, witnesses to the rise and fall of human pride across centuries. They do not shout of their brilliance, they simply shine. As you gaze upward, you understand the lesson more deeply. To live with authenticity is to shine without needing to announce it. To live with pride is to chase recognition, always hungry, never full. The choice is yours each day. And so you walk again along the bank, hearing both the river and your own breath. Pride may still call to you at times, urging you to speak louder, to prove yourself. But now you know that the taste of truth cannot be faked. Like the persimmon, it reveals itself immediately. All you need is the courage to be honest, and the humility to let silence speak when words would only serve pride. The river guides you onward once again. Its waters glimmer faintly beneath the night sky, carrying you deeper into the land of stories and lessons that unfold as naturally as breathing. You follow its path until the sound of footsteps crunching against frozen ground reaches your ears. The air has grown colder, and the moonlight shines on a slope where snow gathers thick around the trunks of pine trees. There, a group of young monks are struggling under the weight of buckets filled with water. Their breath rises in clouds, their hands red from the cold, yet none of them complain. Their master walks silently beside them, watching with eyes that hold both sternness and compassion. This is where the next lesson begins. The temple where these monks lived was high in the mountains, far removed from the comfort of cities. Winters were harsh, the winds sharp, and the snow unrelenting. Water had to be carried up steep paths from a stream that cut through the valley below. It was work that numbed the body and tested the spirit. Many visitors wondered why such tasks were required of the monks. Why force them to haul water in the freezing night when simpler solutions might be found? The answer, as the master once explained, was not about the water at all. It was about training the heart to remain steady regardless of circumstance. Anyone can be calm when conditions are comfortable. The true measure of peace is whether it holds firm when the world grows cold. One evening, a storm swept across the mountain. The wind howled like a living beast. Snow stung the skin, and even the most seasoned monks hesitated to step outside. Yet the master called the youngest among them and handed each a pair of buckets. "Tonight you will carry water," he said. The novices stared at him in disbelief. Surely, he did not mean it. The storm was fierce, and the path treacherous, but the master's expression did not waver. He was not cruel, nor was he testing them for amusement. He knew that lessons learned in comfort rarely endure. Reluctantly, the monks obeyed. They wrapped their robes tightly, lowered their heads against the wind, and stepped into the storm. Each step was a battle. The snow reached their knees, the buckets pulled heavily at their shoulders, and the cold cut through every layer of cloth. The temptation to turn back gnawed at them, but the master's voice echoed in memory. The path is not about ease, it is about constancy. One monk stumbled and fell, spilling water into the snow. He cursed under his breath, ashamed of his weakness. Another grew angry, wondering why they had to suffer when the task seemed so pointless. A third, exhausted, nearly gave up entirely. Yet each time they faltered, they remembered the steady presence of their teacher walking beside them. He did not scold. He did not carry the buckets for them. He simply walked, his breath steady, his eyes calm. His example was a lantern in the blizzard. When they finally reached the temple courtyard, their bodies ached and their clothes were soaked. They expected praise, or at least relief. Instead, the master motioned for them to set the buckets down gently, and then said, "Tomorrow you will do it again." At first, despair filled their hearts, but over time, something unexpected happened. The task that once felt unbearable began to change them. Each journey into the snow revealed a strength they did not know they possessed. The cold no longer seemed like an enemy. The weight of the buckets became familiar. The path, though still difficult, grew less frightening because they had walked it so many times. They began to understand what the master had intended all along. Steadfastness is not the absence of hardship. It is the ability to keep walking regardless of it. This story, though born in a mountain temple centuries ago, speaks powerfully to the struggles of modern life. We too face storms, though they may not be of snow and wind. Ours are storms of stress, loss, disappointment, and uncertainty. We carry heavy buckets in the form of responsibilities, expectations, and fears. Some days, the weight feels impossible. Yet the lesson of the monks reminds us that peace is not found by escaping the storm. It is found by learning to walk steadily within it. Think about the storms you have endured. Perhaps it was a season of illness, when every day felt like a climb up a frozen path. Perhaps it was the loss of someone dear, a grief that settled over your life like endless winter. Perhaps it was the quiet storm of doubt and exhaustion that so many feel in the middle of their work or family life. These storms test us, sometimes to the point of breaking, but they also reveal what comfort alone never could, that we are stronger than we realize, and that steadfastness is possible, even when ease is not. The buckets the monks carried were not meant to be symbols of suffering. They were symbols of endurance. Each drop of water that reached the temple was proof that effort, even in the harshest conditions, could nourish life. In the same way, every act of resilience in your own life carries water to the temple of your being. Each time you choose to keep going, each time you refuse to surrender to despair, you are bringing nourishment to your spirit. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself walking that snowy path. The wind howls, the buckets pull at your shoulders, but your breath is steady. You take one step, then another. You do not need to run. You do not need to conquer the storm. You need only to keep moving, to remain steadfast. Feel the strength of that truth. It is not about winning against the storm. It is about refusing to let the storm dictate who you are. The master once told his monks, "The storm outside is loud, but the storm within decides whether you stumble." Steadfastness is not controlling the world, it is calming the heart. This is the wisdom we are invited to carry into our own lives. We cannot always choose our circumstances, but we can choose our steadiness. When the monks looked back years later, they realized that the nights of carrying water through snow had been among their greatest teachers. They learned that resilience is not built in comfort but in challenge. They learned that the path to peace is not sheltered but weathered, and they carried that understanding into every part of their lives. As you return once more to the river in your imagination, The lesson lingers with you. You hear the water moving steadily, unaffected by wind or snow. The river does not resist the conditions around it. It flows regardless. You realize that you, too, can be like this river. The world may shift, storms may rise, but your essence can remain steady. The stars above watch silently, their light undimmed by clouds. The river flows, your breath continues, and the story of the monks and their buckets becomes your own. Tomorrow may bring its own storm, but tonight you have learned that peace is not fragile. It is not dependent on comfort. It is steadfastness itself, the calm center that endures even when the world shakes. The river that has carried you through so many lessons now curves gently into a valley where the moonlight rests heavily on the water. The night is deep but not threatening. It feels like a quiet space meant for reflection. As you follow the banks, you notice a small wooden bridge arching across the current. On the far side stands another figure, an elderly monk with eyes both kind and sharp. His posture is relaxed, but his presence feels like the still center of the valley. This is where the next story begins. The monk's name was Joshu, remembered for his unusual way of teaching. He never lectured at length. He preferred short exchanges, questions that cut deeper than long explanations. One day, a student approached him with a burden of words. The student bowed and said, "Master, I have emptied my mind of desire. I have let go of possessions and ego. I carry nothing with me." Joshu looked at him for a long moment. Then he asked, "If you carry nothing, who is the one claiming to carry nothing?" The student blinked, unsure how to respond. His pride had been hidden beneath the language of humility. By declaring that he had abandoned ego, he had built a new ego in its place. He was proud of his emptiness, attached to his detachment. Joshu's question pierced this illusion like a blade through thin paper. The master then told him a story. "Imagine," he said, "that you must cross a wide river. You build a boat and row yourself safely to the other shore. Once you arrive, would you continue to carry the boat on your back as you walk through forests and mountains?" No, the boat was useful for crossing, but once its purpose was fulfilled, you leave it behind. Joshu's eyes softened. "In the same way," he said, "even ideas of enlightenment are like boats. They can carry you across, but if you cling to them, if you make them into trophies, they become burdens." The student lowered his head. For the first time, he felt the weight of the invisible boat he had been carrying. It was not made of wood, but of pride and self-congratulation. He realized that as long as he continued to proclaim his emptiness, he was never truly empty. This story holds a mirror to the traps of what we might call spiritual ego. In the pursuit of growth, wisdom, or peace, it is easy to turn progress into another form of self-importance. We begin to measure ourselves against others. We may say, "I am calmer than before. I understand more than those around me. I am further along the path." And in those thoughts, pride slips silently back into the heart. Consider how this appears in daily life. Someone may practice meditation, but boast of how many hours they sit, as if duration were proof of awakening. Another may read many books and speak eloquently about philosophy, yet their words become a stage for showing superiority rather than for sharing compassion. Even kindness can become tangled in ego when we perform it for recognition rather than from genuine care. The teaching of Joshu warns us gently but firmly: do not mistake the finger pointing at the moon for the moon itself. Do not confuse the tools of the path with the destination. The goal of practice is not to collect achievements. It is to dissolve the need for achievements altogether. Imagine yourself carrying that boat Joshu spoke of. It is heavy across your shoulders, awkward against your back. Every step reminds you of the effort it takes to hold on to something no longer needed. Now imagine setting it down on the shore. You feel lighter, freer, too able to walk without strain. That is what it means to release the spiritual ego. It is not about abandoning practice, but about abandoning the pride that grows around practice. The student, after hearing Joshu's words, asked softly, "Then what should I do?" "Master, what should I carry if not even enlightenment?" Joshu smiled. "Carry nothing," he said. Walk as the river flows. Shine as the moon shines. Do not claim it. Do not resist it. Simply live it. This answer was not meant to be mysterious. It was meant to remind the student that life itself is the path. To breathe, to walk, to listen, to be. These are not lesser acts than meditation or study. They are the very heart of awakening when lived without pride. Think of the moments in your own life when you have felt most genuine. Were they not often the quiet times, when you were not trying to prove anything? A conversation with a friend where laughter came naturally, a moment of solitude when the sky opened wide and you felt small but whole, a task done with full attention, whether washing dishes or planting a seed. These are moments when the ego steps aside and being itself shines through. The danger comes when we try to capture those moments, to claim them as proof of progress. The instant we say, "I am enlightened," we have already stepped away from it. True awakening cannot be claimed. It can only be lived. Joshu once told another student, "Stop chasing after the Buddha. Stop clinging to the idea of being spiritual. When you are hungry, eat. When you are tired, sleep." This was not a dismissal of practice, but an invitation to simplicity. Enlightenment is not a distant prize. It is the way you live now. If you live without entanglement, as you listen to this story by the river, you can feel its weight in your own heart. Perhaps you recognize the invisible boats you have carried, the need for approval, the pride in discipline, the subtle comparisons with others. Each of these weighs on you more than you realize. Imagine setting them down now. Imagine the freedom of walking without them. The river flows beneath the bridge where Joshu once taught. It does not carry pride. It does not claim emptiness. It simply moves, reflecting the moonlight as naturally as breathing. That is the essence of the teaching. To live like the river is to live without clinging, without boasting, without turning even humility into a crown. You cross the bridge slowly, feeling lighter with each step. Behind you, the boat of pride is left on the far shore. Ahead of you, the path opens into the night, wide and clear. The stars above do not ask you to prove anything. They shine because shining is what they do. The river does not announce its purpose. It flows because flowing is what it is. As you walk onward, you carry the lesson of Joshu, not as a weight but as a lightness. You begin to see that peace is not something to achieve. It is something to uncover, something that appears when the layers of pride are set aside. You understand that true humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less, so that life itself can shine through. This story prepares you for what lies ahead. More lessons will come, more challenges, more mirrors held to your spirit. But you know now that the greatest trap is not failure. It is success claimed too loudly. It is turning the path into another possession. By remembering Joshu's teaching, you walk more gently, more freely, more alive. The night has carried you far. You have walked along rivers, meadows, courtyards, mountain paths, and wooden bridges. Each place has offered its lesson through story, and each story has left behind a seed of wisdom. Now the journey slows, not to end abruptly, but to deepen into quiet. This is the moment to weave the threads together, to bring the teachings from the world of parables into the living breath of your own body. Imagine yourself sitting once again beside the river. The water moves gently, its surface touched by silver light. The stars above are steady, their silence echoing in the sky. You draw your cloak tighter and settle onto the soft ground. The stories you have heard are not separate from this place. They surround you like the sound of the current, reminding you that the wisdom of others becomes your own when you pause long enough to feel it. Close your eyes in this imagined scene. Inhale slowly, noticing the cool air as it enters. Hold it gently for a moment, then exhale, letting the breath carry away the weight of unneeded thoughts. This is not a performance. There is nothing to prove. It is simply the act of being here, as the river is here, as the stars are here. The first breath reminds you of the story of the student who listened to the rain. His poetry became alive not through rules but through presence. As you breathe, imagine the sound of rain tapping softly on a roof. Each drop a reminder to listen without effort. Let your mind become like that student's window, open and receptive. The rain of thoughts may fall, but you do not need to control it. You only listen. The second breath recalls the story of the wooden bowl that held clear water. Inhale and feel the simplicity of that bowl in your hands. Exhale and release the need for glamour or display. With each breath, you are reminded that essence matters more than appearance. The water that quenches thirst is more valuable than gold that impresses but does not sustain. Your own breath is your bowl. It holds life quietly, without seeking recognition. The third breath carries you to the memory of the persimmon. You recall the sharp taste on the tongue, the truth that does not bend to pride. As you inhale, feel the directness of that lesson. As you exhale, let go of the need to decorate your experience with stories or comparisons. Taste the moment as it is, neither sweeter nor more bitter than it should be. Let truth be enough. The fourth breath brings the image of young monks trudging through snow with buckets of water. Inhale the cold air of that mountain path, crisp and biting. Exhale the warmth of your endurance, the reminder that peace is not about comfort but about steadiness. Each breath you take is another step through snow. You may feel resistance, but you continue. And in continuing, you discover strength. The fifth breath carries Joshu's teaching. You inhale and imagine the weight of a boat across your shoulders. It is heavy, awkward, unnecessary. As you exhale, you set it down. With that release, you feel lighter. Your breath is no longer burdened by pride disguised as humility. Each inhale is simply inhale. Each exhale is simply exhale. Nothing more is needed. In this way, the stories have become practices. They are no longer distant parables. They live in your breath, in your imagination, in the rhythm of your body, as you sit quietly by the river. But the night offers one more gift. Look again at the landscape around you. The river does not only flow, it reflects. The stars do not only shine, they remind you of the vastness above. The ground beneath you does not only support, it connects you to the earth. All of nature whispers the same lesson. Peace is already present. It is not created, it is noticed. Now bring your awareness more deeply inward. Feel the rise of your chest as you breathe, the steady beat of your heart, the weight of your body resting. Notice how life continues within you without effort. Your heart has not asked for permission to beat. Your lungs have not demanded recognition for drawing air. They simply do their work, quietly, steadily, faithfully. Like the monks carrying water, they endure. Like the wooden bowl, they serve without display. Like the rain, they fall gently into the present moment. Perhaps you sense resistance. Thoughts appear, worries, regrets, hopes. Each is a drop on the surface of the river. They ripple, they spread, and then they fade. You do not need to chase them. You do not need to silence them. You only need to notice that the river remains beneath every ripple. The mind, too, remains beneath every thought. Imagine now the first light of dawn beginning to touch the horizon. The stars soften, the sky grows pale, and the surface of the river shifts from silver to gold. You have sat through the night with stories and silence, and now the day arrives like a gentle promise. You stand and stretch, your body steady, your mind quieter. You realize that you are not leaving the teachings behind. You are carrying them forward, not as burdens but as quiet companions. As you begin to walk away from the river, reflect on what you have gathered. You learn that presence gives life to poetry. You learned that essence outweighs glamour. You learned that truth tastes simple and cannot be changed by pride. You learned that steadfastness is born in storms, not in comfort. You learned that even humility can become a trap if clung to as an identity. And you learned that peace is not found by striving but by noticing. Carry these lessons into the daylight of your own life. When you sit at a desk or walk down a crowded street, remember the rain on the window and the taste of the persimmon. When you face a challenge, remember the monks carrying water through snow. When you feel pride rising in your chest, remember the boat left behind on the far shore. When you wonder what truly matters, remember the wooden bowl reflecting the moon. And when you feel restless, Remember the river always flowing, always steady, always present. The journey has been long, but it has not been about distance. It has been about depth. You have not traveled to another place. You have returned to yourself. The stories were not meant to lead you away from life, but to guide you into it more fully. Now the sun rises over the valley, painting the river in light. Birds stir in the trees, their voices, a chorus greeting the day. You breathe in the fresh air of morning, and with that breath, you understand something simple yet profound. Peace is not waiting for you in some distant tomorrow. It is here, in this breath, in this step, in this moment. The river has shown you, the stories have shown you, and now you know. You walk into the day with calm in your chest and light in your eyes. The journey continues, not in temples or meadows alone, but in every ordinary moment of your life. For the path is not separate from you, it is you. The night's journey has led you through rivers, meadows, courtyards, snowy mountains, and quiet bridges. Along the way you listened to rain on rooftops. You held a simple wooden bowl that reflected the moon. You tasted the sharp truth of an unripe fruit. You walked steadily with buckets of water through storms, and you set down the heavy boat of pride that weighed on your shoulders. Each scene, each story, was not meant to remain in the past. They were doors opening to the life you live right now. Think for a moment about what you carry with you after hearing these tales. You know that presence gives meaning, as the student discovered when he stopped chasing rules and listened to the rain. You know that essence matters more than appearance. As EQ revealed with the wooden bowl of water, you know that truth cannot be decorated. As the persimmon taught the young students, you know that resilience is born in hardship. As the novices hauling water through snow came to understand, and you know that even humility can become pride. As Joshu showed when he reminded his student not to cling to emptiness. These are not abstract ideas. They are living principles. They belong in the way you speak to those you love, in the way you face the challenges of work, in the way you meet yourself in moments of silence. They ask you not to admire them from afar, but to live them. The call before you now is simple. Be present. When life tempts you to rush or distract yourself, remember the student at the window listening to rain. Stop and notice. Listen to what is already here. Be sincere. When life pushes you to display wealth, status, or control, remember the wooden bowl in the garden. Offer what is real, even if it is small. What is real will always nourish more deeply than what is glamorous. Be honest. When pride urges you to exaggerate, to compete, or to prove yourself, remember the taste of the persimmon. Speak simply, accept truth as it is. It will be enough. Be steadfast. When storms rise, when work feels heavy, when loss chills the spirit, remember the young monks on the mountain. Keep walking. Each step forward is an act of courage, and in that constancy you will discover strength greater than comfort. Be humble. When you feel pride in your progress or superiority in your growth, remember Joshu's boat. Let it down. You do not need to carry the symbols of awakening. You need only to live awake. As dawn rises in your imagination, the river reflects the first light of morning. This is your reminder that peace is not hidden in temples or ancient texts. It is found in the way you breathe, in the way you look at the sky, in the way you treat others, and in the way you return to yourself. So step into your own day with these teachings alive in you, not as burdens, not as trophies, but as companions. Let your life itself become the poem, the bowl, the river. Let your actions shine more brightly than your words. And when the storms come, as they surely will, remember that stillness is already within you, waiting to be noticed.